up to make sure that can people on Zoom hear us? Just want to make sure before we do half this meeting. No one hears.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. We're very, very lucky to have a bunch of wonderful qualified panelists to share their work with us. I'd like to officially welcome you to the Plastic Waste Reduction Town Hall, sponsored by the Office of Irvine Councilmember Kathleen Treseder and the Sierra Club Angeles chapter. We'll begin a panel discussion and then open up to Q&As from the audience, both in person and on Zoom. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Achumen and Tongva peoples. We respectfully honor and recognize them as the caretakers of this land, water, and air that we stand upon. I'd also like to take a moment to shout out a few inspirational young activists that are with us today, both middle schoolers here in Irvine, Kaylani with H2O Protector, and Claire, who has gone viral for her practice of plogging, going around town picking up plastic waste.
Thank you.
We're so lucky to have many excellent qualified panelists here to share their expertise with us. I want to begin by inviting each panelist to introduce themselves to the audience, discussing their professional background and interest in the issue of plastic waste. Councilmember Treseder, can you kick us off?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I am a council member for the city of Irvine, and I'm also a professor at UCI. And I have dedicated my career to studying how humans affect the environment, and then how that in turn affects us. And so I have noticed over the years, whenever I teach my classes, at the end of each class, I ask my students, what is the environmental issue of most concern to you? And overwhelmingly, every year, it is plastic pollution. And I understand that you can see it everywhere you go. And so as a council member, I ran to be a council member to address this issue and other environmental issues. And so we are working very hard to do this through the city. And so this town hall is part of it. And I'll probably go into a little bit more detail about what we're doing. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher McGuire. I am a graduate of UC Irvine in the Earth System Science Department. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran, an active member of the Surfrider Foundation, and an Orange County business owner. Kind of what drew me to plastics. During my time in the military, I was abroad, I was in a bunch of places, and I really saw how prevalent plastic is in the environment. If we think it's bad here in the United States, you should see it in some other places. And then when I moved on from the military, I started to study oceanography. My focus was coastal oceanography, kind of at the micro scale, where I looked at phytoplankton and the impacts that humans had kind of on that population. And I couldn't look at a single sample collected from our coastal waters without finding microplastics in them. So it was everywhere. So I decided to change how I lived, and I determined, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to eliminate plastics from your life. And I decided to open up a business to try to help facilitate that within my community and help people eliminate plastics, at least from their grocery stream.
Hello and welcome. My name is Andrea de Vizcaya Ruiz. I am an associate professor at the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health in the program of Public Health at UCI. I've dedicated my career to study the impacts of environmental pollution, mainly air pollution, and I've worked with particles, particulate matter, and this has driven me to study materials in the environment and the potential implications for health. So I work a lot, and I direct a research group where we're worried about the implications within the respiratory system, because that would be like the main point of exposure, but then how that goes into our other systems in the body, like cardiovascular, metabolic diseases, and others. And also, as I've been at UCI for the last 2 years, I'm also very much involved in bringing STEM to communities. So I work with the Santa Ana School District and Santa Ana Madison Park neighborhood to expand our knowledge into the communities for young children and how they can get involved in STEM. So that's like a wrap up of my work, and thank you very much.
And last but not least, Raj.
Hi, my name is Raj Tharani. I'm a class action attorney with the firm Gutright Saphir. I brought multiple class actions against major corporations for false environmental claims, which are very prevalent these days. I'm also the chairman and co-founder of a nonprofit in California called the Oakland Urban Farming Project. And my interest or passion regarding recycling and false recycling claims just started at a young age. In my line of work, people often gravitate towards the claims, working on the claims and fighting the false claims that the ones that they find most frustrating. And for whatever reason, I didn't plan on it, but these were the cases that I kept seeing and being attracted to, seeing these claims and that they are just blatantly false. And it's at a time when, environmental issues are becoming not an issue for the future, but an issue that we have to address immediately. And so, so that's why I'm passionate and why I'm here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for introducing yourselves. To get it kicked off, I'm going to start with a statistic. According to the EPA, 35.7 million tons of plastic waste are generated in the United States annually, composing 12.2% of municipal solid waste generation. Why is this an issue? What are the impacts of our plastic waste on our ecosystems and on our local environment?
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
So the problem with plastic is that it is not naturally recycled. So almost every other substance on Earth can be broken down by microbes, like the wood, metal, other things. They have evolved for a long, long time to be able to break down those materials. Plastic is a new type of material, not seen before on the planet. So the microbes don't have the ability to break it down. So all the plastic that we generate just remains in the world one way or another. Now you may see it, it may look like it's breaking down. You may not see it anymore with your eyes, but all it's doing is it's breaking down into smaller and smaller and smaller particles. And then those small particles go out into the ecosystem. They're small enough that we can absorb them through our digestive tract. Other animals can, plants can, all these organisms absorb it. And so basically, the take-home message I want to say here is every toothbrush you have ever used in your life still exists. That plastic still exists on the planet. And so we are just making more and more of it. And so I'm concerned about the long-term implications.
In addition to that, it's kind of a threefold problem. So what Dr. Tresidder was talking about is its persistence, and it never goes away, right? But we also have a very large problem with efficiency when we talk about plastic. We spoke about that 35.7 million tons that were generated. This was generated this is data from 2018 that we retrieved from the EPA. And if we look at that same data set, we can see that our recycling rate is about 9%. So of that amount, only 9% is getting recycled. About 16% of that is being combusted for energy recovery, so we're lighting it on fire. And if you've ever heard about these burn pits and the veterans and what they're suffering of because of it, it's because we were burning plastics in those regions. And then the rest of it, about 76% of it gets landfilled, okay? So we're sending it to landfill where it is not going to decompose, where it is going to persist for a very long time, and we're gonna have to come back eventually and deal with it at some point, okay? So this was data from 2018. More current data that was released from 2021 suggests that our recycling rate is now down to about 5%, okay? So we're only actually recycling 5% of it. the inefficiencies continue from there. So this is what is making it to the recycling factories. But through that process, we are losing some of that material. So all of the material that shows up to a recycling center, only about 60% of it gets turned into new material. So about 30% of it actually gets wasted. And with this material, we are not able to make food safe grade plastics. We have to introduce virgin plastics in addition to that, and we can't make it food safe. So anything that you see your food in, chances are it's 100% virgin plastic. And then kind of the third issue that we have is with human health, right? So if we think about plastic as a material, there's a lot of stuff that goes in it. Plastic by itself, an analogy that I heard one time is think of plastic as a spaghetti. So you think of one polymer chain of plastic as an uncooked noodle of spaghetti, right? It's very brittle. If you bend it, you're gonna break it. We have to add a bunch of things to that virgin polymer in order to make it useful to us, okay? So we add plasticizers that make things flexible. We add dyes to add colors and all these other chemicals. And a very small percentage of those chemicals have actually been studied. So we need to be very careful with our exposure to those and keep very good track of those and do those studies before we introduce them to our human population.
Yeah, just to continue on that thread, Dr. Daviskaya Ruiz, your research focuses on microplastics and a lot of the human health impacts that we began to see through the widespread pervasiveness of microplastics. Can you please speak to some of the new research that you've seen and sort of just give people an overview of what academics are thinking right now, the potential human health issues could be with microplastics?
Of course, thank you very much. So my main area of research is toxicology. So I actually look at that, the contact between the chemical and the biological responses. So when we have something in the environment that we are exposed to, the first thing is what is the amount of exposure, the concentration of the exposure, and does that have an implication towards human health? And that we will measure knowing the responses or the effects after that exposure, right? So we measure, and one of the main concerns right now, or the step that we're at, is how much plastic, and my colleagues here just mentioned how much plastic there is in the environment and how much we are actually addressing to take care of it. So that will be like the first thing. So we are exposed to plastic. How do we know this? Because in the last 5 years, I want to say, more and more measurements within humans, in placenta, in blood, and in certain tissues, that people, colleagues in the lab have been able to identify the plastic. There's a lot of discussion toward the thresholds and the type of plastics that are being identified, because we have polyester, we have polyethylene, we have vinyl chloride, all the different formulas that are there depending on if it's like Chris was mentioning, for food, it's going to be a native plastic, but if it's recycled, it may become a different type of plastic, but all these plastics overall are in the environment. So in terms of the exposure, we're dealing with the commodities or the utensils that we're using immediately. And on the other hand, everything that is being wasted or leaked into the environment. So we have kind of like a double type of exposure. So this to say that at the moment where we are in terms of human health impacts is that we know that in certain tissues, there are accumulation of plastics. We are not in the stage right now to know whether if you have more fat, are you accumulating more plastics like we have with pesticides, for instance? Are these plastics favoring fat versus muscle versus other type of tissues? We are exploring that. And the main controversy are the instruments, the analytical approaches, chemically speaking, because we're able to identify different types of plastics, but we're still not in the place where we can say this is the specific source in terms of the size of micro or nanoplastics. As Kathleen was mentioning, plastics are going to be degraded to smaller and smaller particles. We have nanoplastics, microplastics, and we're exploring, and we have to use different types of instruments to know the type of plastic and the size of the plastics that are being found in human tissues. But just last week, I was sharing with my colleagues that a paper from the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the most renowned journals in medicine, just reported a study in Italy for about 270 people where they found plastics in atheroscleroma. And atheromas are the accumulations of fat inside your circulatory veins. So they accumulate that, and there's no reason why, first, we should have plastics in a human body, and second, associated to disease. So the question is, if these people that have atheromas are more prone to accumulate plastics, or the atheromas are consequence of the plastic presence. And that's what we're exploring, or where the science is taking us. So the interesting thing as a researcher and as a toxicologist is we want to know, okay, the analytical tools we have, what type of answers can they give us? And at the moment, there's not a study of epidemiological effects, or can we account in a large number of population what the type of plastics there are or what type of diseases are associated. Having said that, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, we were thinking the same things about air pollutants, for instance. And we want to wait another 60 years to find out, oh yeah, now we know that it increased neurological diseases like Alzheimer. Oh yeah, it's associated to tumors in the endocrine system. So I think it's up to us to decide right now, are we going to focus on helping this type of research to figure out and also to avoid the amount of plastic that there is in the environment, or are we going to keep on exploring? And specifically in our research group, we have worked with zebrafish as a model, as a toxicological model, where what we are seeing is that two types of events. The zebrafish is your regular tiny fish that you can buy in the aquarium, and it's a very good model for toxicology because it shares some of the genomic imprint that humans have. So some of, like, we could say the origin of organs that are gonna grow towards the same organs that we have in humans, they come from the same genetic background. And what we have observed is that some of the fish lose what it's called the sensation of alert. So they just stay still. So there's a threat, they don't perceive it anymore. And that in an environment is very dangerous, of course, because that would make them prone to be eaten by bigger fish. And on the other hand, we identify the organelle, which are the neuromass. And neuromasses are sensory organelles that function a little bit between our nervous system and our ear. And when fish are in a bank, the neuromass are the ones that are perceiving the neighbors. So they all swim together in a big group. But if they lose that, they get lost because they don't perceive what's happening between their other fish that are swimming next to them. So this is, we were able to identify the specific organelle that was injured, and also we measured different types of plastic, and the polyester was the plastic that more. So this is your regular white styrofoam, and I think definitely the way plastics are made has a big impact because it's how much when the manufacturers make the plastic, they want something that is useful, flexible, and long-lasting. And the long-lasting is what is, in my view, going to impact us more as a society in terms of diseases, because as Kathleen mentioned, it's going to stay there for a very long time. Thank you.
All right. Having sort of defined the problem now, I think the next place to turn is what potential solutions might be. And of course, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is the idea of recycling. Plastic industry associations tout recyclability as one of the main advantages of their product. In fact, they've recently been marketing certain water bottles as 100% recyclable. As someone who has worked on cases about corporate greenwashing, Raj, can you please tell us a little bit whether these claims are true? And then more broadly for the rest of the panel, why can't we just recycle more?
So thank you, Adam. And yeah, so there's no question here. My colleagues here have set up the stage that this is a real problem, right? We have these chemicals building up in our environment. We don't fully understand them, and and they're causing real health problems for folks. The issue of plastic recycling is that, there's just this vested interest among companies to carry on as they happen. It's very lucrative for the plastic industry to continue making plastic and convincing consumers that, hey, this is innocent. This is green. Don't feel bad about this. Don't feel bad about putting your plastic in the recycling bin. In fact, feel good about it. And you should. I'm not saying don't recycle. Please recycle. It is a harm reduction method, right? But it is an imperfect and dirty process. And it's a complicated and difficult process. As I've done this work going after companies for false recycling claims, I've learned more and more about recycling, and it's as difficult as you imagine, right? We have a single stream of plastic, right? We put up all our plastic into this bin, it gets all tossed together, and it gets taken to a facility to be sorted. And just as you imagine that it would be challenging to turn that pile of essentially garbage into something valuable, it is that difficult. It is challenging. And so they struggle with it. And they tend to take out the most recyclable items that they can make a profit recycling and throw the rest away, right? That's the model that works. And so a significant portion of all of the waste that we recycle is thrown into landfills, right? So for me, I can't make everyone care about the environment, right? I don't have that ability. I want to thank you guys all for coming here. It makes me filled with hope to see this group of people who are willing to hang out here on a Saturday and talk about environmental issues. This is the solution here. You guys are each of you here who care enough to do this are leaders, right? Leaders in your household. When I was in college, I would recycle. I would pin up the rules of recycling in my house, and my roommates would groan, but I did it. So that is part of the solution. It's just helping the people you live with recycle right. But I'm kind of getting off topic here. So recycling is a dirty and imperfect process. So Adam mentioned solutions. What are solutions? One is just doing what you can in your own home, right? Another thing that I'm working on is, high impact litigation. So I'm working with the Sierra Club in a class action against major manufacturers of these products. And it's going to continue happening unless we make them feel pain, right? People are willing to pay a significant premium for products that they perceive to be environmentally friendly, right? So it's a big business. And all these companies are figuring out, how is my product green? How is my product natural? How is my product recyclable? How is it compostable, right? And they really thrive on the ambiguity and lack of clarity. So if they can exploit people's ignorance or uncertainty about something, they will. So be skeptical when you see those claims. And if you're aware of deceptive claims, tell your friends, this isn't actually true. And then the biggest thing is going to be changing our policy and supporting candidates that care about the environment, that are proponents of the environment. That's just something we got to do now, right? And it's got to be a top of the line issue, right? It's not going to be. This is really the hardest part about doing these things, is it's more inconvenient and it's more expensive to do things that are going to be for our long-term benefit and for the long-term benefit of the environment. But it's something that we have to do, right? And we're never going to get people to voluntarily do that universally. So we have to have laws where everyone is just held to the standard, saying, you've got to do this inconvenient, a little more expensive thing that is going to be for the long-term benefit of everyone here, so that we can have a future society that benefits from this bountiful earth that we have. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And, just continuing on that thread of, what individuals can do, we're going to kind of run it up the chain here from individuals to businesses to governments. Just want to ask everybody on the panel too, what can individuals do to try and reduce the amount of plastic waste that they produce? And are there any ways they can safeguard themselves from the harmful effects of plastic, or is it truly inescapable?
Thank you very much for asking this. I want to echo Raj 100%. The most effective thing you can do is advocate for policy that bans the production of single-use plastics, especially. The plastic industry is basically the fossil fuel industry. They're very powerful, and by design, they have sent the message that it is the job of the individuals to clean up the mess that they're making. And so the way to stop that is to make these policies that prevent them from making the mess, right? So that's helpful. So even coming here, so just coming here and being here and showing your presence is a way to affect policy, because people will see this, they'll know there's political will. You can advocate for to elected officials like me. You can send emails, write letters, ask to meet, interact on social media, asking for action. Those are all very helpful. And then, of course, voting for people who share your values will also be helpful. Those are big. A small thing that I just like to do as an individual is whenever I see plastic litter on the ground, I pick it up. And just like, Claire has inspired me to do. And so, and what I think about when I see, first of all, most people, I don't think that they see plastic litter. It's all part of the background, we're so used to seeing it. But once you start looking for it, you can realize how much there is. So I pick it up. Even better if someone sees me doing it. Maybe they'll be inspired to also pick it up. And I know it probably seems very small, but what if everybody did? What if everybody who saw plastic litter picked it up? It will add up. So that's for me.
I want to say two things. I'm not sure if specific towards the solution, but as individuals. So the first thing I would like to comment is on exposure. So as a toxicologist, I'm always thinking about the exposure, and I'm always thinking about the consequences. So the first thing I would say, if you can, avoid the use of plastic containers, and especially do not microwave them and do not put them in the dishwasher. That would be like the first thing. Why? Because as mentioned, first, the one-time plastic containers that's what they are for, designed for one time. If we keep them and then we use them for recycling, we use them to heat food, we use them in the dishwasher, they will leak other components because they're not designed for a long term. They're designed to be used one time. So that's the first thing I do. If you can replace your plastic containers for glass, that's definitely what you want to do, and avoid heating them. And in terms of the big picture, I want to add to what Kathleen and Raj were saying, like accountability. I feel, and I declare myself completely ignorant in the policy and in the law, how you can pursue this, but definitely companies, they make all these plastics, they sell it, and that's where the responsibility ends. That's for them. I got my benefit, I got the money that I wanted to make from this product, and I have no responsibility after that. However, we all have that responsibility. What happens afterwards? So I tell my students, if we think about the circular economy model, like if we throw something away, and as Kathleen was mentioning about the toothbrushes, we tend to feel that it disappeared from our life. We have no connection with that anymore. However, it went somewhere else, and there's money adhered to this, there are jobs adhered to this, there's an economy adhered to this that goes on afterwards, after that product has been in my hand, it's finished, I don't even remember the color or whatever because I threw it away to the waste, but there's a process after that I'm accountable for. Why? Because it's going to impact my environment and my health, but companies should be accountable for as well. And that is what's not happening. For them, they sold the product, it's finished. And what happens afterwards? There is no responsibility. And I think if I produce whatever product I make, I have to be accountable for its entire life of that product, and not only for whatever use is being made for.
I just kind of wanted to touch back on the materials again really quick. There's a lot of plastic out there that, now it's like a safer version, right? So we've always seen, we're seeing like BPA free and things like that, right? And the reason things are BPA free is because we decided to study those things and we found out that they were bad, and then we removed them. Unfortunately, what the industry is doing is they're switching over to what we call regrettable substitutions. So now instead of BPA, we see BPF or we see BPS. And now that those are showing up in plastic, we're starting to study those and see that they also have kind of similar effects, okay? So the way that we've been doing it in the past is we've been targeting single chemicals. Now we're trying to target groups of chemicals. So like PFAS as a whole group or phthalates as a whole group. Just because we know if one's harmful and you just tweak a little thing at the end of a chemical chain, chances are that's also going to be harmful. So to piggyback, definitely try to eliminate the plastics that you are using. If you switch to another product, if we're thinking about glass or metal, we can talk about the recycling efficiencies of those products. For glass, we have a recycling efficiency of about 25%. It's not great, but it's a whole lot better than the 5% or 10%, depending on the year that we're looking at for plastics. And if we're looking at metal, we're all the way up to 34. Paper, we can substitute for some things, and paper is way up there. We're almost at 70% efficiency on recycling paper. So you need to think about the big picture. And when you're standing in a grocery store, when you're standing selecting something that you're going to purchase, think about what happens with it when you no longer have a use for it. Okay, and that's it.
I can tee up to the next question.
So one of the things I want to add is for individuals, one thing that I've done as I've learned more is just that the rules are always changing, and the materials that they can take is always changing, right? So as we said, like recycling is a form of harm reduction. There is a waste associated with it. It's not a perfect solution, but one of the things you can do to reduce your plastic waste imprint, like just the society we live in, plastic is a part of it currently, right? You can't escape it. You go do your grocery shopping, most people are going to have some level of plastic footprint, right? But the thing you can do is just be honest with yourself in what is trash and what is actually can be processed. And so the whole idea of wish cycling, I imagine this is a highly educated group know about this idea of wish cycling, but it's this idea of sometimes we feel guilt when we throw things away, and sometimes we wish things were recyclable. We could recycle them, but it actually makes your recyclables less recyclable as a whole, because you're mixing in non-recyclable things with truly recyclable things. And then sometimes when the recycling facilities see a lot of items that they see as what they call contaminants, they'll just throw the whole batch away, right? Or the whole bag or whatever it is, right? And so know the rules, don't do wish cycling. And that's another way you can help reduce your plastic footprint. So recycle properly to the extent you do recycle.
Thank you for that. And then moving on to what businesses can do. Dr. McGuire, in addition to your work as a researcher, you also run a zero waste business here in Orange County. Can you explain to everyone what that actually means and what steps businesses can take to reduce their plastic impact?
Yeah. So absolutely. So for my particular business model, basically I took a critical look at the grocery industry and determined, like Raj said, you cannot shop at the grocery store without acquiring plastic, and most of it isn't recyclable. So I turned to the bulk sections of markets and tried to bring my own reusable containers, but that becomes difficult too. You don't have people that are properly trained in a lot of these places, and you'll show up with your jar that you filled up in the bulk section, and you say, this is how much my jar weighs. They don't even know how to put it into the system. So kind of what I did was I isolated that section of the market, made sure that it was just what I was doing, made the tearing system a whole lot easier by collaborating with some people that used to be Google engineers and coming up with a novel way to solve that. And we just encourage people to come in with their own containers, fill up with dry pantry staples, and then all they're paying for is the goods itself. They're not paying for a packaging process. They don't have to worry about what happens to their packaging after they're done, because typically it's a jar. And once they empty their beans and cook their beans, now they have their empty jar that they can bring back to the store. And we can use that again. If we think about the waste management hierarchy, when I was growing up, all we thought about was three things. We had the little green triangle, and the motto was recycle, reduce, reuse. And we kind of just all jumped on recycle and threw the other two to the wayside. We always thought recycling was the most important. But if we look at that waste management hierarchy, it's actually quite the opposite. So the way that it's kind of spelled out now, we need to reimagine how we use things. And that's kind of for companies and policymakers and things like that. But at the individual level, we need to start by reducing. So reducing our intake or our consumption of plastic products. And then we reuse. So if we happen to buy a container that's plastic, find another use for it. Keep in mind that a lot of them aren't food safe to use, so perhaps use another. And then we move on to recycling, energy recovery, and landfill and things like that. So recycling is actually further down than most people think. And the industry just wants you to kind of forget about that piece of plastic. They want you to buy the next one. So they want you to unload it in a system that's not efficient so that you need another piece. So the plastics industry would really not want you to reduce. They certainly don't want you to reuse. They want you to buy that next piece of plastic. So it's up to you to educate yourself and think critically about every container or consumable that you use.
Thank you for that. And, moving on to what local governments can do, they can go above and beyond even what businesses or individuals can do by requiring people to adopt policies similar to those that Chris was just discussing. Councilmember Treceder, you proposed an ordinance here in Irvine to do comprehensive plastic waste reduction that ended up stalling out. Can you tell us a little bit about this ordinance and where things stand in the city of Irvine right now?
Yeah, thank you. So just to give you the background, I mentioned the plastics industry is essentially the fossil fuel industry. Well, the fossil fuel industry sees the writing on the wall, and they know that we're all trying to decarbonize, so they're trying to find other ways to use their fossil fuels. And so they have made a concerted effort to plasticize goods that normally wouldn't be plastic. So that's why you're seeing so much more plastic now. But there's a ton of money in this, so they are very motivated to stop any sort of policies that will reduce plastic use. But this was one of my top priorities. So one of the first things I wanted to do on council is to ban single-use plastics in the city of Irvine, which the council. And the council has the power to do that. We write what's called an ordinance. It's basically a municipal law. It goes into effect, and then we could effectively ban the plastics. And so I asked Adam, who is our policy guru in the office, to write a potential ordinance banning single-use plastics. And so he combed through all the existing ordinances for cities all over the country. He took every part out of them that was strongest and made what was the most comprehensive single-use plastic ban in the country if it had passed. And thank you, Adam. All right, so turns out this got a lot of attention from the fossil fuel industry. And as you know, they have $1 gazillion. So they were very alarmed. They sent down lobbyists from Sacramento to come down to Irvine to talk to nonprofits, business owners, anybody they could. And they told them lots of lies about how I wanted to ban, for instance, water bottles. No, I want to ban plastic water bottles, but that was lost on most of the public. They only heard I wanted to ban water bottles, right? So people got alarmed. They sent out text messages to everybody in Irvine multiple times asking them to write to us. They made fake emails that they sent to all the council members. We were getting emails about every 5 minutes, well, actually every 10 minutes, right on the dot. Totally fake. When we call up the residents who sent the emails, they had no idea what was going on. The movement from the fossil fuel and plastic industry was so extreme that it actually made the TV news in LA. So it worked, and it scared my council colleagues. It was hard to convince them that this was all astroturfed, manufactured. And so when we came up for the discussion, there was not much courage among the other council members to vote along with the ordinance as planned. And right now, the most that they could really get behind was banning plastic straws. So and I'll take that, it's better than nothing, right? So the vote for right now is for the city to research banning plastic straws. Also, we are working on banning single-use plastics within our own municipal actions, like this center here will transition to not using single-use plastics anymore, but that's just a small portion of the plastic that we have. So it's really frustrating, really frustrating. So in response, this is why we have this town hall, all right? We wanted to get people together, show that there's political will from the community to do something, bring experts in to explain that what the plastic lobby was saying was not true. And so basically anything, we will bring this back for sure, if not with this council, but after the next election. And if you would be willing, if you care, if you'd be willing to keep an eye on that, and then also contact the other council members who are on the council to say that you care and that you want them to ban plastics, that will be super helpful. But right now, it got watered down a lot, but it is not dead. We are going to bring it back.
I just want to add something that I don't know if you are aware of the importance, I'm sure you are, but from the public health perspective, this falls under what we mention or we know as a precautionary principle, because we're trying to avoid an issue. So this is super, super important. And from public health perspective, we're going to avoid a major concern or a major even impact to health in the future. And it's difficult to comprehend because we're usually taught or we are used to to have like a reaction. And that's why in our mind, when we are able to look for a solution, it's because we are responding to an event. But here we are avoiding the event, and that's even better. So congrats, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, when you think about it with climate change, we knew that climate change was going to be an issue decades ago. What if we had done something about it back then? We wouldn't be in the position we are right now. This is only going to keep getting worse. So now is the time to act.
Absolutely. And just in closing here, I want to open it up to each of our panelists before we turn to the office or turn to the audience and see if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to leave everybody with. So I'm just going to open it up right now. Anyone wants to wrap it up?
Let me think.
Well, I'll just start by saying thank you all so much for being here. It is such a beautiful Saturday, and there are many other things that you could be doing, but you care enough to come here and listen to us talk to you. So thank you so much. It really does make a difference. And yeah, just generally, I'm so grateful to live in Irvine. We have a lot of resources here. The public really cares. The environment is often the top 1 or 2 issues for the voting public here in Irvine. And if anybody can do it, we can, right? And my goal is for the city to be a leader so that other cities in Orange County, they see what we pass as an ordinance and they could just copy it. They don't have to put all the work into it. So this is very important, and thank you all so much.
Well, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and I would like to add my 2 cents to this. So one is community action. That is one thing that as public health researchers we're trying to push forward. The other one is education. So it's so important to reach out to all the different levels, from like our very young activists, that is so important, and to all the community in schools, and then support research and innovation, because this is the only way that we are able to identify like the cause, the effect in all areas, in medicine, in environmental science, and in material science, in this specific case of plastics. So thank you very much.
I would just like to kind of tee off of that education piece. So yeah, it's very important that we educate ourselves. Some of this information is very difficult to track down. It's difficult to track down current information. We're talking about the numbers that the EPA are reporting, and they're back from 2018, right? So there needs to be a push that we keep this data very current, and we stay on top of it. So kind of that being said, it's hard to track down this information. Feel free to contact me at any point if you need to be pointed in a direction. This is kind of what my life is about. So I do a lot of work and staying up and looking into this stuff so that I can disseminate that information. So if you ever need help with anything, I'm more than willing to help. And thank you guys for having me today.
I'll add, so there's a couple of things that I think we can close on. One is, like we touched on, this is a group of leaders and people who are passionate about environmentalism. So one of the things that we can do is carry ourselves with the right spirit, right? Which is a spirit of non-judgment. Invite other peoples to be right with you, right? Like if you have, like I have my parents, right? And just the idea of being gentle with them. It's not about me being right and them being wrong. It's that we can both be right. We can be right together. So go with that spirit of humility and inviting others to be right with you, not judgment. And the other thing is just there's so much power in just speaking the truth, right? Just repeat the truth, right? We're in a time where there's a lot of dishonesty, not just in recycling claims, but just everywhere we go. And one of the best ways to fight it is just to speak the truth often, use your voice. That's it.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for All right, so now we're going to turn it over to questions from the audience. Those wishing to comment in person, you can come line up over here. Those wishing to comment via Zoom, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat and we'll ask it for you. We'll trade off between in person and Zoom one-on-one. So I'll turn it over to your first in-person question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So illuminating, all these speakers. I'm the chair of the Sustainability Commission for the City of Irvine. Kathleen appointed me. Thank you all for your contributions. I love the comment about the law of regrettable substitution, and I just had this conversation with our director of sustainability saying there's no such thing. Oh no, we've made a lot of improvements. All of these product changes are no. So just to know that education for the staff is important. It's regrettable that there are not other council members from Irvine here today. That would have been very encouraging. However, I will say there are numerous candidates for city council who are here today, including myself and several others who are here who are supporting me. Yeah, so that is something I would just encourage you all to take that, encouragement on supporting good candidates. And then also, this is just another observation. The advertising on YouTube around plastic water bottles, I think this is probably exclusive to Irvine. I don't know. It's like I see it every time I open up a YouTube ad. There's that plastics industry thing showing me how I got to recycle everything. And it's like, it's super doubled down since that vote. So it's very distressing. Raj, I'm curious of your take on that. And like, if they indeed put more resources here since that vote. And then finally, this PFAS thing, we're installing acres of AstroTurf at the Great Park. And I know this has huge PFAS implications in that we need costs to be assumed by the manufacturer, of course. Anyway, like, I don't know, I invite your comment on any of those things. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate how I always holds us accountable. That's good. So, yeah, I have been seeing those YouTube ads as well, and it's exactly from the same group that really lobbied hard against this ordinance. And so, they make so much money. I think that they must have put in maybe 100, 200,000 into the lobbying effort this last time. So paying for some YouTube videos to saturate the Irvine market is probably trivial to them. So it's tough. Yeah, the AstroTurf in the Great Park, I'm opposed to 100%, for a lot of reasons. But the main is that that's a ton of plastic. So I have already told our city manager that I don't support it. I want grass fields. And so when that next comes up for a vote, I will be voting against putting an AstroTurf in.
I can speak just a little bit. I don't know, I don't want to comment on any specific litigation that's pending, but I can just say that as people are becoming more aware about the issue of plastic recycling, so there was, I meant to comment on this previously, but in 2018, there was a big shift in plastic recycling, and that's why this issue is becoming a bigger deal, is partially because we had a setup where we import a lot of goods from China, and we don't export as many goods as we import. So we had a lot of empty cargo ships going back to China. Someone came up with the idea of, why don't we put our plastic waste in those cargo ships? And so we started exporting our plastic waste to China. And we don't know really, truly how much of that plastic ever got recycled. A lot of it likely ended up landfilled. And that went on through the 90s and then even into the 2000s. Eventually in 2018, they said China passed a legislation called National Sword, which banned that practice from occurring anymore. They stopped accepting our plastic. And then cities were faced with this issue of suddenly not having a place to send their plastics. And so for the longest time, cities would have all of these claims that you can recycle this, 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 and this, because there was these foreign markets for it. But we don't know really if that was ever true or how much of it was true. And now it's becoming a real problem because now all that unrecyclable plastic is on our doorstep. We don't have a place to send it anymore. So a lot of the false claims are due to this happening. They know that consumers are becoming more aware of the problem of recycling. And so they're doubling down. They're saying they're repeating this claim like, recycle, 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 because they need people to believe that the recycling will work. And so that's why we're seeing more and more, and why we're seeing the doubling down of these claims. That's my personal understanding.
And I would argue that it's also getting more difficult to recycle. I live in Costa Mesa, and the one facility that I had in Costa Mesa at OCC is now no more. So I cannot take my recycling to them. So I now have to take it to Huntington Beach, where a few years ago they would take pretty much everything that I brought. But now, slowly but surely, they're accepting less and less of what I'm trying to bring to their doorstep, to the point now where they're only accepting it in beverage bottle form. So I could have two bottles that are exactly the same. If one of them had laundry detergent in it, they're not going to accept it. It has to have been a beverage bottle. So they're turning away tons of stuff at these facilities, unfortunately. So it's important that we realize that.
I just want to briefly comment on the park. That is so important because parks are public spaces and they are normally more frequented by the less protected population sectors. When we should understand this as children, first and foremost, the elderly, people that have a predisposed disease, or people that don't have another form of entertainment because of their socioeconomical status. So putting plastics and all also the fields for football and stuff that they are filling with the fragmented tires, This is so dangerous because you're only making focus places for that type of exposure. So yeah, doing that in the park is going to be very, very limited.
Next, we're going to take a question from Zoom. Susan, you can unmute your mic.
Hello, everybody. It's Susan Keefe. I am, first of all, super excited with all of the leadership in this room. I too am an environmental leader. I'm super passionate about plastic waste. I mean, to the point where I actually just published an article about it. I heard what Kathleen said about being gentle and speaking the truth. I think that that's very important because no one wants to feel guilty or shamed, or they become apathetic or they go the other direction, right? So the more we can talk about this, when we go to the coffee shop and they put a lid on your cup that you didn't even want, you know, you can refuse that and you can point out, hey, you know, how about if you put it in a ceramic cup that you have behind the counter, or bring your own. So those are some of the ways that I'm trying to make an impact here, you know, locally. And I also love what was said. Sorry, there's a lot of background noise. I don't know if you guys are even hearing me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, just sounds bad on my end. Anyway, I echo what everybody said. Chris, I love your shop, and you and Jessica, I try to come there as much as I can. There's so many lies about recycling, and I think just holding the recycling companies accountable, holding the brands accountable are all things that each of us can do, as well as obviously change our own habits. I did have a question I put in chat, and that question was really around the reusing of plastic containers, number 5s mostly, which are not recyclable, by the way. If they tell you they're recyclable, they're lying. You know, 5% is really the 1s and the 2s. So I wash those by hand. I'm hoping that that's safe, and I would love to hear what the toxicologist has to say about that.
So it depends on the type of plastic. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So it depends on the type of plastic. So the most common plastics that we have available are polyester, propylene. There are the ones that are coming from plastic bags and containers, polyvinyl chloride, which is the one that is used for tubes and coating for electric products and cleaning products. So it's going to be a matter of the type of plastic and how much it can leak and the contact. So sometimes it can stay in some of the products of the food, in with the water, and then that's depending on the amount that you ingest, it's going to be type of how it can harm your health. I hope I have answered your question.
Specifically, I'm asking about number 5, and I forget what kind of plastic that is, but number 5, which is what most yogurt containers are made of, what most plastic takeout containers are made of. We have quite a lot of them, thanks to COVID, and I reuse those constantly, and that's what I'm specifically asking about, number 5 plastics.
Yes.
Yeah, polypropylene.
Yeah, so there is the classification that you look at and underneath every plastic, and it depends on, I think it's number 3, 7, and 6 that are the worst type of plastic. But if you want to look at it in a very broad way, if plastics are harder, the most probably they'll be less prone to be leaked. If plastics are softer, they're of a poorer quality. So so that's in the terms of like plastics such as containers. But then we could have like textiles, especially those textiles that are waterproof or that are thermoregulators, are going to have more plastics or more components because they are avoiding, and they could be a little, I mean, they will serve very well for weather protection maybe, but you have to be aware of the fact that this product will have a more a long-term type of life, and then some of them, even when you wear them, you smell them, that they smell a little bit like solvent, and that would be very unusual, for instance, for a piece of clothing. So specifically, it will be the type or the texture or the lifelong type and use of the plastic.
Got it. Thank you.
Wayne's gonna ask the next in-person question.
Thank you, the city. First, Kathleen, before I say thank you, I want to thank your staff. You have wonderful staff. And I want to thank the panelists and all of you. Such a beautiful Saturday. There's so many other things you can do. But actually, luckily, this venue is very nice. I was coming here, I just saw this park space, open space. It always touches my heart. And the city does a good job to keep the place clean. But here's the thing. The place does not clean by default. It costs the city hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to keep the place clean. And I mean, we have a One Irvine program that incentivizes residents to electrify their homes. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we spent half of that hundreds of thousands of dollars to incentivize residents to electrify their homes, right? So I don't want to badmouth the city too much now, and I will pick a different example, but everything's the same. So I go to a lot of city council meetings. I'll give you one example in Dana Point. Go to a lot of Dana Point City Council meetings too. And Scenic Drive, some of you probably know the place. It's really beautiful. And the city go there to do street sweeping twice a day. That's because, please raise your reusable cups. Andrea and Siraj, yeah. So that's because those people go there with their single-use cups, typically we call them Starbucks cups, right? And if you go there with your reusable cup, chances are you're not going to throw it on the Scenic Drive, right? So the city does not have to clean the streets twice a day. It's very expensive. So same here, right? Why is it so clean? Because we spend a lot of money to keep the place clean. And on recycling, so at actually not more than one city council meeting in Dana Point, there were residents just show up to complain about this recycling center in a neighborhood. It's $1 million neighborhood. Actually, Irvine has a lot of $1 million neighborhoods too, right? And people are just fed up with, the people drive up, with their bottles and cans, and this devalues my house, with the traffic, and also the sound. So does recycling really work everywhere? That's just one more story here. So folks, please email me if we want to group up to speak to city council. We need more transparency on how much money they spend on the cleanups. Cleanup is not our solution. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Every time you smile on the dais, it is so difficult. So just tell us how we can support you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Ress. I'm a Orange County resident, an activist, and a problem solver. Thank you so much for putting this on. Great deliberation, a lot of data. In my view, based on everything we're doing, we're failing. There's no way we're going to accomplish our goals. So until government plays the role, and this is the heavy lift, we all want to do what's right, but we're being bamboozled and lied to by an industry that is solely focused on making money. So all these efforts that we're doing to try and make a dent are really not accomplishing anything on scale. So my view is we need government funding in order to come up with alternative technology, packaging technology, that we consumers then can then, with our buying power, purchase those products based on a truthful acknowledgement that those particular packaging items are indeed what it is that we want, AKA plastic biodegradable. Unfortunately, we all have plastic in our bodies right now. We're failing. I just shared a video on YouTube, and you had mentioned what's happening globally. I mean, it is a catastrophe. So Irvine is leading the way for Orange County, and with our supervisor, Katrina Foley, and the Orange County Board of Supervisors, we're going to have to be in this effort here, and it's great to see young people here. We have to bring this to the forefront and get not only our county government, our local city government, but the Biden administration to help us across the country. And this will be a category that after we get through this election cycle in 2025, we will elevate this category because this is a priority for all of us, and we all want to do good. We just need help to be able to do it. So thank you for doing this morning. Thank you.
And I actually just, because you mentioned it, Dennis, wanted to bring up one thing the city actually is doing in addition to transitioning their operations is they're developing, it's more geared towards restaurants, but basically a buyer's guide to what biodegradable products are out there and what alternatives to plastic are. I don't know if there are plans, I do believe there are plans to release it publicly. I don't know what the timeline is, but that is one of the things that came out of the whole plastic ordinance issue is that they're working on that. So thank you. Next up, we're going to go to Sylvia on Zoom. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Sylvia.
Hi, this is Sylvia Walker, Irvine resident. Last year, I believe it was the middle of the year at the Community Services Commission. At the prompting of questions from the commissioner's staff said that they were going to come back with a study on artificial turf. That hasn't happened, so I'm encouraging, however that could to please have that happen. The Finance Commission did discuss artificial turf from finance standards. Unfortunately, they're
Sylvia, sorry, you're kind of breaking up right now. Do you think you could try and move back? Start over again, sorry.
I'll try. Let me know if it's any better because I don't really know what else I can do. So I'll be quick. Can that happen? The Community Services Commission actually get a study and more immediate. There is a plan, I believe it's still in the works for Poussin and Kaysen at the Great Park to use landscaping artificial turf. When it was brought up, the staff said that was
yeah, can you put the chat? Sorry, it's kind of breaking up, but I think Kathleen can take the question about the turf.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. I think that I got maybe the gist of what you're saying. And so, yeah, so from what I understand, you're saying that the Community Services Commission voted last year to have the staff study the artificial turf in the Great Park and that the Finance Commission also took that up. I can say that this issue is not over. And so I am talking with the city manager who will direct the staff. It will be coming back. And so we haven't forgotten about it. It just sometimes, well, our sustainability department, first of all, we didn't have a sustainability department before I got elected and I asked for that to be developed. So now we have it. But it was way understaffed, as you can imagine, since it was a new department. So they've hired a lot more people. But they basically, we passed a lot of environmental policies last year, so they were a little bit behind. So they're working on their studies. They're fully staffed now. So my apologies for not coming back, but I will check into it. But we haven't forgotten about it. We'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you. Next up, we'll take an in-person comment from Doug Elliott.
Hi, I'm Doug Elliott. I'm a council member to Cedars appointee to the Community Services Commission. I wasn't on it last year. I'm a new appointee, but I hate AstroTurf. And so I look forward to seeing some progress on that front. I'm also one of the rumored to be one of the other city council candidates that I referred to in District 3. So I'm going to be making environmental issues a central part of that effort. I wanted to bring up the plastic bag issue. We had the plastic bag wars of the last decade where the legislature basically banned them, and then the industry came back with a referendum petition and got it on the ballot, which only had the effect of delaying it for a couple of years because it was resoundingly voted down. But nonetheless, they did stall, and one of the loopholes, though, in the law is that while single-use plastic bags were banned, we've got these, sort of super strong plastic bags now that are supposed to be reusable, but apparently they're not really reused that much. So I think that's going to be a coming battle. I don't know that the state law will allow us to address it on a local level, but maybe it's something that the legislature needs to take another look at down the line.
Do you want to address that?
I don't know if I have a specific answer to that.
There are two state bills right now about plastic bags.
Yeah, do you want to
One-
share, Clay, you want to come with
Yeah,
the
one removes
panelists for a
the-
second, because you know a lot about this.
So everything has a plus side, although our draft ordinance got killed. That got Sacramento's attention. So 4 plastic bills have been introduced in Sacramento. These are statewide bills, and 2 twin bills about the plastic bags. And so grocery stores will not be allowed to keep plastic bags anymore, not this reusable plastic bag. Anyway, but why there are twin bills? Because we anticipate a huge pushback from industry, so we want people to support. And our plastic water bottle initiative, so a bill is introduced in Sacramento that will only not allow the state agencies, including UC system, will not be allowed to buy single-use plastic beverage bottles of 21 ounce or less. So you still can buy that size, you know. So I'm not saying you cannot use plastic bottles anymore, but boy, I have been working on this day and night, even before I came here today. This is a huge pushback. Essentially, as I see, the beverage industry is the body of the front man of the fossil fuel industry. I mean, who doesn't want beverage, right? So, and another one, which is also part of our proposed ordinance, is reusables for dine-in. And the state is only going for the smaller stuff. For dine-in restaurants that are chain restaurants, you would be required to use only reusable cups. So, hey, Starbucks, if I sit inside a Starbucks, why do I need to use a single-use cup, right? So please support and email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. We're going to take an in-person comment from Asanta.
Thank you, Kathleen, for putting this together, and thanks for Kathleen's office for doing all the setup and everything. Okay, right. Yeah, so the way to shrink the waste stream is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. But I think the powers that may be kind of put the emphasis on recycle because it makes the responsibility on the end user or consumer. But I think we should also think about the reduce and the reuse, because when it is reduced, then they, the manufacturers, they have to think about how they have to change the way they make things. So one of the ideas that, so in EU countries, they have detergent refill stations in grocery stores. Because if you look at it, a detergent bottle weighs about, depending on the size, 15 to 30 times a single-use water bottle. I think a water bottle is like about 9 or 10 grams, and these detergent bottles can be really heavy. And then, so you reuse the bottle again and again, and then the manufacturer reduces. So, instead of, it could be a cost saving for them too. Maybe we could tell them, you can greenwash it by saying, I'm reducing the number of bottles I'm shipping, so you can help them polish their green credentials a little bit by, putting it that way instead of, saying that trying to reduce something or something like that. I don't know, because I think recycle, like looking at the percentages on plastics especially, it's not going to cut it. That's my point. Thank you.
Anyone on the panel have anything to add to that?
No, I think that is all great, perfect points there. And yeah, I think that overriding theme of today is the plastic industry pushing back so hard. And so we need elected officials who have courage, right? Who can stand up to this sort of lobbying. And there are those out there. So there is hope.
All right, we'll take our final two in-person comments, and then Denora is going to ask the 3 questions that were in the chat.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I live in the University Hills community. I'm part of the sustainability committee there, and I'm also spearheading zero waste events over there. I have a question for toxicology and a law about bioplastics. Like the spaghetti noodle, I think corn is also pretty brittle. So I'm actually wondering, what are they using to plasticize the biological stuff that is being made into plastics? And also, I happen to know if it ends up in the landfill, it's actually worse than regular plastic because as it's degrading, it generates methane, the bioplastic. So it's only viable if it actually went into an industrial composter. So do we have a big case of greenwashing there? I'm asking yourself. Thank you.
Are you asking me?
Both.
Let them go first.
I would like to hear your answer.
Yeah, sure.
Well, from like the environmental science point of view, if it's going to generate an additional chemical, it's not going to be really serving the purpose of being sustainable. So, of course, methane, we know it's one of the main climate change greenhouse gases. So that's definitely not something that we should be looking for. As far as I know, there aren't so far very efficient bioplastics and such. So we call them bioplastic because they'll have like a 30%, 40% perhaps of some more natural type of materials, but not as such that we can reuse or have an alternative. I mean, what is more sustainable in my way, and I would like to, like, if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me. It's like cotton, paper, those are more, but would be more like a bio-friendly type of containers than new chemical mixtures that we're not sure what the end products are going to be. That would be my comments. Thank you.
With respect to your question of do I think that's greenwashing, I think that there is a decent case for that, and that, my wheels are already turning on that. That, if you're telling people, this is biodegradable, compostable, but it's not so under ordinary conditions, my firm has brought cases against companies that have made false biodegradability claims. And so the green guides prohibit a biodegradable claim unless it's biodegradable under normal methods of disposal, right? And so sometimes you'll see biodegradable claims on, like, for example, wipes or things like that, right? But it's only biodegradable under these commercial composter situations, which most consumers don't have access to and most municipalities don't have. In fact, composting is not even widely available to a lot of people. So the FTC has kind of already laid out a framework, and then you have these new claims. One of the challenges of bringing those cases is that a lot of those biodegradable cups, they're not bought by consumers. They're bought by like a restaurant and then given to consumers. And so that makes it harder for the class action because, when I'm going into the store and I see something that says biodegradable and I buy it because of that claim, I've been defrauded. When I'm at a restaurant and it's not a central claim, it was just given to me, I wasn't defrauded in the same way, So it's something I think thank you for bringing that up, and I'm going to do more thought on that. So, but there's definitely a potential there for misleading folks.
And I've also been trying to kind of address this at the local level as well. A lot of businesses that I kind of align myself with are trying to switch over to greener methods, and they're being duped. They are buying into these compostable cups, and they're posting it on their Instagram and saying, hey, look at us, we're doing the right thing. Here in Orange County, we don't have the ability to process these materials. We do have like city-run composters, but it's all open lot. We don't have the conditions to actually process these things. They're rejecting them. Eventually, they would be able to process them, but it's an efficiency issue. They want to be turning this compost over so that they can sell it or get it back into the community where it's useful. And these compostable cups, it takes a lot longer. So it's fouling up these loads and making things even more difficult for that industry. So a lot of people are looking at these biodegradable alternatives or these compostable alternatives and saying, in fact, they might be worse than plastics because we have processes and we know that we can recycle some types of plastic. If we can just focus on the right ones and use those, then we would be better off than trying to find these earth-friendly alternatives that we have no means of breaking down. Really.
All right, and then we'll take our last in-person question.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting this wonderful event. So I had a comment and a question. So first, I'm Dr. Zainab Sadi, UCI internal medicine primary care physician. So I promote complete wellness, and that includes the environmental health because it impacts individual wellness. And I wanted to bring up, I'm part of the California Medical Association. They're very active on the environmental issues. I'm part of the California Council on Science and Public Health. So they have a lot of resolutions in promoting hospitals not use the disposable plastics, and that may not be common knowledge. But I'm very excited to see a lot of leaders about the environmental wellness here, so we can take advantage of that in the medical world, promoting those as well. And I look forward to hopefully working together with the other leaders in this room. I'm also a candidate for City Council in Irvine with District 1. So before the November election, I look forward to being in touch with the other individuals here on that common cause. And then a question I had for the group is about the styrofoam. I know in Los Angeles, that was like their Earth Day events had was emphasizing that is recyclable, like clean and dry styrofoam is okay. But here I'm told that it's not. I just wanted to clarify, is there a possibility of that happening in the future, or that, because I know they have the recyclable logo that creates a lot of confusion for the lay public on that. And then if you clarify about plastics in the sun, I know people pick up their disposal and leave it in the sun. I heard that can increase the leaking of chemicals into the liquid, which is also not common knowledge. So thank you so much for your
Yeah, so definitely it's not recyclable. If you're going to transform a chemical molecule to another chemical molecule, you're just transforming that, but it's not recyclable. And it's been proven to be one of the most materials that are leaked into solution. And then solution will make it chemically more available in the body. So certainly, I mean, I of course don't know the process or I don't know what they are proposing as a chemical process to degrade this. But as far as I know, it's almost impossible because you're just transforming one chemical molecule to another chemical molecule, and that will not be viable or biocompatible with the human body. So it's certainly not. I don't know how they can advertise that to be recyclable. Yeah, that's my comment.
And to kind of answer your question about leaving a bottle out into the sun, if we're thinking about transferring of chemicals in plastic to our food, we kind of think about three items. We think about the type of food that's inside of it. So we're thinking about the chemical composition of what's in it. So if it's a very acidic food, it's going to tend to leach a little bit quicker as it eats away at the inside of that plastic bottle. We think about temperature. So as soon as we start to elevate temperature, we're making it more, making it so it can transfer a little bit quicker. So it's going to transfer the fastest at very high temperatures, like when it's about to break down. But any rise in temperature is going to have some sort of effect on it. And then the third thing that we think about is storage time. So you could leave it in the perfect conditions, but if you leave it there long enough, you are going to experience some leaching. So we're kind of hitting on two of those if we're thinking about bottles, right? A lot of people are having an emergency plastic bottle that they leave in the trunk of their car or something. I know that I did it for years, and we're kind of hitting two things. We're doing long-term storage, and then we're going to be heating up and cooling it off, heating it up. So that's kind of a dangerous thing to do as well. So you need to find alternatives if you have an old bottle bonking around in the back of your boot, right? Okay. Yeah.
And I would just like to add something to that. I mean, right now we're focusing on plastic, but again, this one-time plastics, if you fill it in and then you leave it in the heat and then you empty it and back on and on, like we have microbiomes in our body. So we are actually putting them in that new bottle, and then you're gonna have other organisms that are gonna start growing there, because it's not sterile. I mean, sterile I hope when they sell it to you, but if you're reusing it, there's all types of different, especially fungus and bacteria that are coming and going, and that they're opportunistic. So as soon as like there's heat, there's other environmental characteristics, they're gonna start growing there. And I mean, it can sound a little bit like gross, but it's true. Like people reuse, but they're not cleaning those bottles. They're not taking them to the processes and then you're adding to the plastic also the organisms that are going to live there, and you're ingesting them again. So you are doubling the type of risk that you would have. So water bottles, I mean, they're bad because they're only for one-time use. And second, because they can get very dirty and then make or increase the susceptibility to other diseases. So yeah, no, don't do that.
Thank you, guys. Hi, everyone. My name is Nora. I will be reading out the questions that were put in the chat on Zoom. So the first one is going to be from Jade A. Jade A asks, can you talk about how bioplastics are not the solution, parentheses, in part because they require specific conditions to break down and are still single use, and also how the terms biodegradable and compostable are not regulated terms. Yeah, so that's the first one.
Yeah. I think a big part of it is when they're designing these materials, they're thinking really long term. So while they might not be as bad as a traditional plastic, if it's ending up in landfill, like it eventually could break down, we do have the dangers of what it could break down into. But in composting, kind of how we're doing it at the city level, it's a very quick thing. So like I kind of spoke about before, the turnaround, they expect it to be about 2 weeks, and none of these materials break down that fast. So you're throwing your banana peel in or your food leftovers, that stuff's gonna break down really fast, and they can process that. They can clear their lots and make room for more composting to come in. But if you're leaving plastics in that material, it's gonna have to stay longer, and now you're gonna require a larger lot because it's gonna be spending more time at that facility in order to adequately break down. So yeah, at the moment, just as bad, or some view it worse than plastics.
In terms about whether it's regulated or not, I believe I have brought cases against companies that have made compostable or biodegradable claims. And I know that there is some guidance, at least from the Federal Trade Commission in the Green Guides, about the use of those claims. I'm less familiar with the word compostable. And like you said, or I think implied, there are different types of compostable, right? Is it compostable in my compost? You know, is it compostable in a municipal environment? So I know less about how they're dealing with that fact, that compostable can mean different things. Forgive my ignorance on that point.
Thank you. Jade also asks, other cities like Oakland have successfully passed single-use plastic bans, so it is possible. There are also California state bills in process for banning certain single-use plastics that we should support in addition to the ones at the local level. I'd also like to hear about your perspective on this being a city versus state issue, since that was brought up many times in the Irvine meeting, and Irvine is deflecting responsibility to the state.
So I agree the state has weighed in on a lot of these issues, and they do have legislation that in some cases has hampered us as a city from banning certain things. And so that is really frustrating. Basically, we can operate with any sort of area that has not been specifically decided on by the state. So that means that, our state legislators are also very important with this issue. So I also encourage you to reach out to your state legislators.
The other point that just observation is that, it's a both, right? It's both a city level issue and a state level issue, right? On some level, the state has more power, right? If the state makes a regulation, if California says we're not going to allow this type of product, California has a ton of influence and power to affect how companies make their products, right? So if California starts making regulations, and with its 40 million people, it has tremendous influence and power. But then at the same time, it has more of an aversion to risk because of the fact that if you do something bold and new and you try and implement it on a huge scale of 40 million people and it goes bad, then it goes bad. So the cities like Irvine have a cool potential to lead the pack and try things. Things can be tried and they can fail. And that's okay, right? Because we're trying to figure out how to solve a problem. Sometimes you try and solve a personal problem, right? And you try multiple things and the first thing might not work. And so, I think that's the right way to look at it. It's like, cities can do things on a smaller scale. They can be innovative, and they have that potential. So.
Perfect. And then we're down to 2 more questions, and these are a lot simpler. And this is directed towards our faculty at UCI, but from Susan. She asks, does UCI still recycle styrofoam into surfboards? I know there's one on campus filled with white foam, but I'm wondering what happens to it.
So UCI has a very advanced low waste program. And so we do things like when the students are eating at their campus housing, they don't get single-use plastics for their dinners. They check out a reusable plastic container, eat, and then turn it back in. And so we have a lot of things like that. We try to be very advanced. I don't know the answer to that particular question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, guys. Last one from Sylvia. She asks, can we get the Poussin/Cadence Great Park Landscape Project stopped? That is the landscaping with the artificial turf at the Great Park. So can we stop it?
We could if I can get the majority of the council with me. So that's just the issue. But we will look into it. Adam, can you please make a note to check into that? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for being here. We have the room until 2:30, so you can please feel free to stay and mingle. Just to wrap us up here, these art pieces that were off to the side, Claire was going to come up and quickly introduce them, but thank you all so much for being here, and please feel free to stay and mingle. And one last time, can we give it up for our panelists?
And thank you to the Sierra Club. And I'm sure we have donuts left. Please grab a donut.
So this artwork was by Jennifer Kim in Irvine. It is titled Trashimi, and the description is, through my research of ocean pollution, I was shocked by the sheer number of trash thrown away into the sea, as well as the thousands of dead fish from oil spills in the ocean. The pollution is symbolized by a sick-looking fish with a soda can body to represent sashimi on the plate that the food ends up on. Around it are garnishes for sashimi, which are trash, such as cigarette butts, plastic water bottles, and so on. The soy sauce is made of petroleum, and there are lemon garnishes of old tires. I used acrylic paint to emphasize the fish along with several other garnishes on watercolor. Around the plate are old articles and articles concerning pollution. I named this piece Trashimi to reflect on the items from the sea that we will eventually consume, but also as trash me, because the trash that we humans throw away just come back to us in a cycle.
Thank you all again. Hope you have a great rest of your Saturday afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I really appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely, yeah, my pleasure.
And I understand.
Me, the chair, and